It's just that simple. All right. Hey, everybody. It is the 26th. Today, the 26th of September, we are into autumn, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. I see we've got at least one Southern Hemisphere person has shown up. Hi, Ricky. My name is Alex Glassey, and I'm the host of BusinessPRO TV. And we have lots to talk about today, both because we've got some homework from last time that I want to go through, but also because this is a topic today that I absolutely love. I got Stephanie Gorczynski. She is, you've just seen her, and my co-producer, she is going to be hanging into the chat for a bit, and we'll bring her in as we go through the various slides. And you can always ask your questions in the chat, which is over there. And at the end of the session, of every session, of course, we have an opportunity for you to come on the show live. And if you have any particular questions or clarification, or want to tell us how your holiday went touring New Zealand, then you can always come on and chat with us. We'll do that in after hours. So let me just get to the next slide here. Whoops, not quite there. So this is where I was on Saturday. I'll give you this slide right here. This is Echo Bay in Saturna Island. My wife and I hiked out there on Friday afternoon and then came back on Sunday, and we had this bay to ourselves for all of Saturday, and we literally watched the tide fall. It was just awesome. And as we were being very, very quiet, there's a deer on the cliff just over down here. There's a deer on a cliff that actually fell down the cliff. It was okay, but just we got within a few feet of that deer. Yeah, it was awesome. And so yeah, while we're here, we got this beautiful picture, and just again, let's take a few seconds just to pause and take a deep breath and to pat ourselves on the back for setting aside this time for working on the business, not in the business. You're really looking after yourself when you do this, and it's also great to be able to do this in the company of your peers. So welcome to BusinessPRO TV. It's really good that you're here, really good that you're doing this. All right, let's get back to the thick of things. Okay, so for those of you who are watching on YouTube now, live right now, if it's the 26th of September and it's about 5 p.m. Pacific, you can come into f2f.live/AlexG and you can see us doing this live, and you can participate both with your with chatting by text, but also with your camera and with your mics. And if you're looking at this as a recording, we're doing this every Tuesday and Thursday for the next till the cows come home. So do come and join us. Just to what got us up to here. So we started off in the first episode talking about how a business owner, the definition is someone who has creativity, and they're trying to take that creativity and turn it into a little engine, a little financially sustainable engine, an engine that contributes cash. And we wanted to talk about this definition for several reasons. But the reason I want to talk about today, again, just a reminder, is that what we're trying to do is separate ourselves from our business. And that even though most of us are in sole practitioners or very small businesses, we're the person in the business, but the business is separate and distinct from us. And we need to be able to pull ourselves out from that so that we can actually work on the business, not let our ego and some of the other stuff that, gets in the way of doing a great job building the perfect little engine that can spin out that cash that we need. So we started there. And then we talked last time about what happens when we follow traditional business thinking, listen to what the customer, wants us to give them and then just follow that. And we talked about the steps that got us into this awful place, this transaction box place, where we're not focusing on our customer at all. As you can see here, we're not focusing on our customer. We're focusing on our competitors, our customers looking at our competitors, and we start to look like our competitors. We get commoditized, we get price squeezed, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all a bad thing. And that, no doubt, then leads us to a place where, this is data that came from the first survey we did, where, pardon me, business owners themselves aren't happy with their sales, their margin, their growth, and in fact, they're dissatisfied with their life. So how do we get out of this? And we started to talk about because we're the business owner, because we're the boss, we get to make the decisions. We also have the power to design the business that we want. We have the power to design the business that we want. And we started off by saying, well, if we could imagine a magical place where we're doing what we love to do, we're doing what we're really good at, and it's also what customers value. The closer that we can move to this intersection right here, where customers are paying us to do things that we love and that we're good at, that's a magical place. And so, that may be nirvana, and we may never absolutely get there perfectly. And I know some days we may feel like we're there, and then the next day we feel like we're not quite there, right? Comes and goes. But we need to have these, goals to shoot for. His aspirational goals to shoot for, and we talked about that. We then talked about Simon Sinek's video and book, and Simon says that we need to start to think about ourselves and our business and communicate from the why we do something from the outside in, and we talked about that a little bit. And then we talked about it last time. We ended up by saying what we want to start to do is to think about lifting our chins, to start to look beyond the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day, working in the business. We need to start to work on the business. And the way to do that is to lift our chin, and let's look out 5 or 10 years from now and try to think, what would we want our business to aspire to, this kind of North Star? And we may never reach that North Star, but what it starts to do, and you'll see this, we're going to just continue to develop this thing, that's the first step of planning. The first thing is we put some long-term aspirational goal out there that is inspiring to us, inspiring also to people around us, and it helps us to set other goals which show up like this, and helps us to keep on track, and helps us to assess the various opportunities that come our way. Right? Is it consistent with who we think we want to become, who we think we want the business to become, right? Along the way, we'll create intermediate goals, and we're going to start to do that next week on Thursday. We're going to start to do that, and we're going to continue to refine that over the balance of the episodes. Anyway, intermediate goals, which are going to take us closer or maybe further away, and we're going to zig and zag our way, always in the pursuit of that aspiration. And so we've got some homework that you guys worked on, and I spent, wow, it was awesome. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But first, what we're going to talk about today is innovation, the magic ingredient to any successful business. And by the way, I wanted to say that innovation applies to every organization, large or small, product-oriented or service-oriented, high-tech or low-tech. Innovation is always there, and we're going to talk about all of that stuff today and how it applies to you. Even if you don't think innovation applies to me. No, I'm not in the software business. I'm not a California tech business. How does innovation apply to me? Absolutely is critical and does apply to you. We're going to talk about how innovation is at the heart of business strategy. We're going to spend 3 minutes on business strategy, no more, I promise. Otherwise, I'll bore you to tears. We're going to then get practical. We're going to take a look at 3 corporate innovation examples. We're then going to bring it home and how to innovate in the smaller firm. And I've got another example, another story that I want to tell you there. As always, we're using f2f.live, which is a fabulous way to meet, teach, and webinar and do live streaming with up to 1 million people online. We're still in that beta 1. I know my co-founders on F2F are working feverishly to get the next release ready, and it'll come when it comes, but it's going to come this week. So it'll just take something that's awesome and make it awesomer, if that's even possible. Okay, so here's going to the homework and the survey that I gave you before the weekend. I was so pleased to see you spending time at this. This is the work. This is the work of doing the business. So this is what some of you said. You love this, completely inspiring, so excited. Customer Dreams, the book. Great book, very helpful, and great episodes. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And then some of you said this as well. I'm having a tough time. This is a difficult process thinking about my business and thinking about aspirations. This is really stretching me to move from working from in to on, especially because I've been working in my business for a long, long time. Exactly. Exactly. This is the start of separating you from your competitors. Because it's hard work, your competitors are less likely to do it. This is the start of connecting more meaningfully with your customers, right? You started last time thinking about your customers' aspirations, not just what your customers ask you to deliver to them. And this is the start of how you inspire the people around you, not only your customers, but your staff and your suppliers. And in fact, I would suggest that this is the start of leadership. Leadership is that definition. I like to think of the definition of leadership as, start walking and then turn around and look behind you. And if anyone's following, then you're a leader. And this is how it starts. It starts from internal stuff, thinking deeply about who you are and what you want to put out into the world. So thanks for sharing the fact that you're having a tough time. You're not the only ones. And it's good work. This is the tough stuff that actually reaps some rewards. Here's so what I've done here is I've taken some of your aspirations and just pulled out snippets here and there. I've changed them so that no one can be identified here to protect the guilty. Someone here said, we want to become Utah's go-to provider of this and that. And I love this because they're very specific as to the region and where they were going to be operating, and as to their position. We're going to be the go-to, the number one provider. So very clear as to what their aspiration is. Awesome. We want to become one of the top 10 most respected and trusted financial advisory firms in Northern California to both employees and customers. Again, we got the region, we got the top 10, being very specific numerically as to where they want to be, respected and trusted in the region, and then to both employees and customers. I love this, right? Including not just to my customers, not just to my community, but I actually want to be respected and trusted to my employees. Hey, your employees are the ones that deliver this stuff to your customers. How are your customers going to respect you if your employees don't feel and don't mirror that respect? So awesome. That's excellent work. We are not just compliance experts, but we're strategic advisors. So here's someone who's saying, listen, we're trying to break out from where we were. We're not just this. We're really trying to go here. So again, however you want to quantify it in your head and however you want to communicate that, that's exactly right. So this is, so you can describe it as what you don't want to do as much as you describe it as what you want to become, right? To create and maintain, so I want to become, et cetera, so that I can create and maintain healthy lifestyles and encourage personal well-being through diet. So what happens here, and this is a beautiful part of aspirational statements, is that this was a customer-focused outcome. So not just saying what they're going to do. We want to be number one in doing this, but we want to be number one doing this so that we can deliver this into the marketplace. And not just services, but the outcome, maintain healthy lifestyles and encourage personal well-being through diet. This is beautiful stuff. And then finally, a couple of people, I think several people, not just a couple, focused on this human aspiration and connection that really resonates with me, right? They said, we want to help people achieve lives of relevance. Somebody else said, we want to be an advocate for humanity in work and life. Somebody else said, we want to boost the voices of, and we want to financially support disenfranchised communities. This is the stuff of why. This is the stuff where we are resonating with someone on a nonverbal way. And if you went and watched that video from Simon Sinek, what you saw him saying is that the 3 golden circles are rooted in the biological, and that there is something inside us, some primal drive and urge and sense inside of us, that it's the one that's actually in power and in control of what we do and all our activities. And when we are communicating with that primal piece, that's how you drive action and decisions and community. And so by getting down to this human aspiration and connection, you're really connecting with people. So I really kudos to everyone who, first of all, kudos to everyone who did the homework and who gave it a shot, no matter how difficult it was. And kudos to all of you who hit on goals and numerical places and regions and identifying what you're going to do and who you're going to do it with, and ultimately what the human outcome is of the work that you're going to do. That is aspirational and it's inspirational. Well done. Okay, let me take a second here. I'm going to get into here. Have a cup of tea. It's been a long day so far. Is innovation magic? Is innovation magic? Well, innovation itself, I don't think is magic, but the effects of innovation are absolutely magic. So let's talk about 3 minutes on business strategy. What is business strategy? Here's an awful definition. I'll give you a second to read that. Business strategy is about enhancing the economic well-being of the firm's shareholders by creating, strengthening, and defending the firm's unique attributes. This is so 1960s. It's awful. It's true, but it's awful. But for small firms, this was built in the day when there were big consulting firms working out of big universities that were talking to big corporations. That's where strategy started. So what we need to do is we need to take this, we need to kind of translate it for smaller firms, smaller companies. So let's translate. Business strategy is about making you wealthier. You're the shareholder. So it's not about enhancing the shareholders' wealth, whoever they are. It's about enhancing your wealth and your family's security and safety by creating, strengthening, and defending your firm's unique attributes. So why the uniqueness? Remember the transaction box. When everything starts to look the same, then the only differentiating feature is the price. And when the only differentiating feature is the price, then we start to get downward price pressure. Everyone looks the same. Our marketing doesn't stand out. Nothing works. Everything stops working, or it works worse and worse. What does attributes mean? It's not just related to the product or service. When we think about innovation, we think about innovative products, innovative services. Someone's doing something a different way. But attributes could be how you make the product or service. Think about Walmart and cost. Walmart sells stuff that you can get anywhere else. The Bay and used to be Eaton's, Sears and Target and all those other ones. But what Walmart does is they have a strategic focus on how they do it. And they focus internally on costs. They actually are able to drop their prices, but their costs are so much better that they're actually making even more money than their competitors. So they don't focus on what they're giving you. They're focusing on how they deliver that to you. Think about Apple and design. You can get a tablet and a phone and a computer from anywhere, and you'll pay a lot less for most of the competitive products, competitors to Apple. But Apple focuses on design, what they do really, really, really well, and that helps to differentiate themselves. That is a unique attribute. Not the product is unique, the attribute related to how they and what they deliver is unique. Think about Coke and Pepsi and marketing. And can anyone here name who the third place cola supplier is? I bet you can't. It used to be RC Cola, if you remember those. If you're as old as me, you'll remember who they were. I'm not sure who they were. But again, so their focus is on marketing, not on the product. Their product is sugar, water, bubbles, and that's it, right? So, yeah, let's keep going. So there are 3 things you have to think about. The first is, what makes you different? And these are the things that we're going to explore in the stories that I'm going to tell you. And then this is going to be the homework that I want you to undertake in the next couple of days. So what makes you different? As you think about trying to meet and support the aspirations of your customers, of your clients, how are you going to do that differently? What sets you apart? What makes you different? How will you make money from that difference? We're going to explore this in detail as we go through pricing. This is absolutely critical. And we're starting now, and we're then going to build up over the next 2 episodes to then pricing. We're going to drive into this in great detail. I guarantee you that these episodes and leading up through to pricing are going to generate significant revenue and margin for you. So you have to think, how will you make money from that difference? It's no good just doing something different, but then not getting paid well for it. Then you're wasting your time, right? How will you defend it? As soon as there's money in the water, it's like blood in the water sharks, right? The competitors come swarming. So how are you going to be able to defend it? How are you going to stay ahead of your competition? And what you end up finding is that this innovation thing is a continuous ongoing thing. You're always got to be thinking about innovation, right? So let's step back a sec. And I'm going to bring up some old slides. You see the color of the slides has changed. And we're going to get into a little bit of theory, tell you some stories about some larger companies, and then bring it back to where we all are. So an industry S-curve is what they preach in MBA school. And I've got a great MBA, and I remember taking this, and I remember thinking, man, there's something wrong with this, right? It talks about the life and death of an industry and also the life and death of a company. And what it says is this. It says that we start here. We start here with the introduction of a technology or a product or a service or a something. And then because it's reasonably unique, we get a chance to grow that thing. And so the industry or the company grows. And then as it grows and as it becomes known, then competitors kind of come rushing in and help to slow the growth. Our marketing isn't as effective. We're not the only ones. We start to get margin squeeze, and then we get into maturity, and then we get into decline, right? And then the whole industry will rise, and it grows, and it then declines. And you can chart this course all kinds of different ways. But the key thing I want to point out is that radical innovation happens here. The significant innovation occurs at the start of the life cycle or the start of the particular company. You radically innovate one, it gives you a massive advantage, and you ride that particular wave. Okay? So let's take a look at how that S-curve applies to Kodak. If you remember Kodak, and some of you are old enough, maybe, to remember that they used to sing about, Paul Simon used to sing about Kodak in one of his songs. And so Kodak, if you go back into the, wow, too many slides here. If you go back to the late 1800s is when Kodak started. Radical innovation, which is the ability to take images and reduce it to a box, take pictures, and do it in an affordable way. And then they rode that innovation, and they added in other innovations for sure. They rode that innovation for almost a century, and they were in fact one of the Dow, the companies that made up the Dow 30, I think it is, for a lot of years. At its peak in 1996, they commanded over. Let me make this bigger for you. Let me bring Steph back. They command over 2/3 of global market share. Revenues reach $16 billion. Stock exceeds $90. The company is worth over $31 billion. The Kodak brand is the 5th most valuable brand in the world. Did you ever have a Kodak camera, Steph? And you're muted. Yeah.
I used to. Yeah. I grew up with them, and I've always had one. And the only reason I guess I don't have one now is I don't even know if they're. Well, you're going to tell me about all this stuff, but I mean, moving into this whole DSLR big photography phase, I'm sure that they're involved, but you don't hear about them anymore, you know?
Well, you don't hear about them anymore, and here's why. At the peak, they actually had access to all of this technology. They owned everything in the camera, right? They owned the distributors and suppliers and the patents and all the rest of that stuff. But what ended up happening is that they chose to ignore some of this stuff. They chose to ignore digital, did not know what to do with it. And so what ended up happening is that they went bankrupt. And so at their peak at 1996, and then if you go forward, they actually went bankrupt, filed for bankruptcy in 2012. So it was very, very, very quickly, this massive descent. And I think they were sold for, someone paid $1 billion for the value of the patents, right? So wow. This is a big company who rode exactly that particular curve. But again, where is the radical innovation? There is no radical innovation past this point.
And the funny thing you're talking about.
Yep.
Sorry to interject. The funny thing that you're talking about in terms of innovation, it's really funny. I think about 3 years ago or something, I remember seeing a resurgence of their original cameras that they were selling. They had updated a little bit, but they weren't digital compatible. They were selling them as a throwback, right?
A retro, yeah, that's right. And it might not even have been coded.
It's fantastic on one side, but it's not innovative in a sense.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so let's keep going. So let's talk about Apple. So Apple, one of my favorite companies, a lot of people's favorite companies, how they took a look at that, smart people, and they went, listen, we know there's this, there's inevitability to this thing. Hear that, Mr. Anderson? It's the sound of inevitability, if you remember that movie. How interlocking S-curves delay the inevitable. And if you take a look at Apple, what you find is that Apple is a series of companies. They're a computer company that had the curve, and then they created iPod, iTunes, and they created another curve which happened to reinforce the first curve, and then the iPhone, and then the iPad. Each one of these things, a completely separate company unto itself. Each one of these, by the way, which other companies could not have done. Again, if you watched Simon Sinek's video, because they didn't aspire to be a computer company, they aspired to something greater than that. However, what they did do, if you take a look at this is their stock price. I'm going to interpose their quarterly revenue. We'll jump that up here. And so what you can see is that from the period of 06 to 12, you can see the various companies' revenues stacked on top of each other, and how it wasn't just any one thing. I mean, obviously, iPhone, they would have been a dead company if it wasn't for iPhones, if it wasn't for iPads, right? I could go on and on about Apple, but we'll never get out of here. Fast forward.
By the way, I just saw yesterday they got the go-ahead to go into TV as well. So
absolutely. Listen, now TV, video, online stuff. That's right. So that is who F2F is competing with. We're competing with Apple on TV. So, but here's the good news for Apple. When you talk about increasing shareholder wealth, that's what they did right here. The introduction of their new product started around here, and that just drove up their share price, and they've been the most valuable company in the world for a long, long time. So, but again, what they did is, realizing the inevitability of any one particular curve, they've put 4 curves together. Now, the watch is, jury's out on that, but it hasn't driven the sales and the excitement and anything else the way that they might have wanted to. So anyway, let's keep going, right? So we take that to its logical conclusion. So here we got Kodak, who has one big radical innovation and rides that particular wave until they died, 100 years. And then you got Apple, who has created multiple interlocking companies to increase and increase and increase. And not only increase, I mean, the other smart thing about Apple is that each of their curves reinforces the other products, which is really brilliant. So what they've done is they've extended the life of their computers. They've extended the life of the iPods, et cetera, right? But you take it to its logical conclusion, which is if innovation goes from 100 years, it goes down to 10 years, now let's take it down to its logical conclusion, which is 3M Company, the Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company, which is where the 3 M's came from. And this is what continuous innovation looks like. They are a 115-year-old manufacturer. They have 55,000 products. So they are not making money like Apple makes money on 4 distinct products and then services on top of it. They have 55,000 products. But what's really interesting is that they have integrated the concept of innovation right into their being, their corporate finance, their thinking throughout, their strategy throughout the firm. They've created something what they call a new product vitality index. And this is the amount of revenue, today's revenue, from products that didn't exist 5 years ago. Let me say that again. This is the amount of revenue today that they're generating from products that did not exist 5 years ago. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is that they invent all of their own products. So they, in 2012, their new product vitality index was 34%. 2012 revenues had 1/3 of their revenue came from products that had not been invented 5 years ago. But then think about the future. They also know that 34% of their revenues 5 years from now has to come from the products and services that they're inventing now. They are an absolute innovation machine. And in fact, back in 2012, their CEO upped the percentage that they're spending on R&D and trying to get that new product vitality index up even further. Okay, so this is where I think that's what they're doing, but they're a big company. How does this apply to it? Have you ever heard of the 3M Company?
Oh yes.
Yeah. What do we use their Post-it? In fact, if you crack open an iPhone, there's tons of products inside an iPhone that have been invented by the 3M Company.
I'm always amazed to see their experience from just even walking through the tables to My father's a chiropractor, so we open his cupboards and closets, and there's the X-ray films and all the other films that they use there, and the papers, and you name it. So I'm and beyond. So yeah, they're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, they're absolutely everywhere. They're awesome. And here's what's happened to their share price over the years, right? It's just gone. It just looks like an Apple curve, except it's not an Apple curve. It's an MMM curve, a 3M company curve, right? Okay. Just inexorably powering its way up, right? Okay. So let me just switch the slides back here. No, I can't. You and I are gonna disappear for a minute.
Okay.
And because I want everyone to see the entire slide. So where does innovation's power come from? So here's where it comes from. First of all, innovation is equal to unique, right? We're trying to create something that hasn't been invented yet. And therefore, that by definition makes it unique. Unique equals monopoly. We're the only person that has it. And monopoly equals reduced price pressure. In other words, I can set my prices up. I can increase my margins. So again, for a small company, imagine being the only ice cream store for 10 miles on a hot summer day. So if you could figure out how to innovate a location like that, it would be awesome.
Can you find out where that is and tell me?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, so much of what I do is ice cream, and that's I didn't know that until when I met you. So yeah, you're the ice cream.
It works for me.
Yeah.
It works for me.
Yeah, and then so innovation, again, back to the power of innovation is this degree to the degree that our innovation is high, that also gives us that ability to set the price. But it wanes over time, right? Why does it wane over time? Because competitors figured out, and we have this equal and opposite curve. Again, this is not statistically proven, but it's to illustrate the concept. As we make money, our competitors rush in, and our ability to be unique, the ability to set the price drops, and therefore our margins get eroded. But look at this. This curve right here, this competition coming up, just almost mirrors exactly the industry S curve. And again, radically innovate here, and then do it once, and this is guaranteed that it's going to happen to you, right? Okay, I want to bring it home here. I want to bring it back home. I want to talk about Boyd Auto Body and Glass. Now, let me just pop this up here. Yep. Let's pop this up here. So if you've read Customer Dreams, you know that the quiet hero of Customer Dreams is a guy called Terry Smith. And Terry Smith is actually a real person. He is the person who I know very well that started Boyd Auto Body and Glass in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, many, many years ago. And this guy is an uneducated. My favorite picture of him is when he was 18 years old. He had long blonde hair down. He could sit on it. Biker jacket, leaning against an old Harley Davidson guy, totally uneducated, high school maybe education, and yet he had this innate sense of customers and what they wanted. And he started a chain of restaurants, grew that in a place where restaurants didn't exist, and sold that to people who eventually then drove the restaurants into the ground because they didn't have that same innate sense. And then he went on to create Boyd Auto Body and Glass. Let's take you through this story because it's a story that I love telling. So Boyd Auto Body and Glass, back in the day, this was about 1990. Let's go back in the day. If you dinged up your car and you wanted to take your car and get it fixed, these were your options. And they were a scary bunch. Everyone hated to do it, but that was the state of the nation, and it wasn't changing. What Terry did is he had some insight into auto bodies. The name auto body changes from country to country. Ricky, maybe you can type it in. What do you guys call it in New Zealand? And I think there's maybe someone from Australia on. What do you guys call it? I can't remember now. At any rate, what he recognized was that, and this is not sexist or genderist or anything else, he recognized that the person in the family that was most likely to take the car in to get repaired was mom. And as soon as he realized that mom was just not going to want to go to a place like this for all kinds of reasons. I don't want to walk in there. I don't want to walk out. I don't know if these guys are going to do a good job. What happens if they don't do a good job? I really don't want to give them my money. How am I going to get home? How am I going to get back? Like it's just all these issues go on in the minds of the customer's brain as they see these options. So with that single insight, panel beaters. Thanks, Ricky. Panel beaters. So awesome. So, and you can see these guys. You can see these guys beating panels for sure. What he did then is he said, I'm going to create an office called a new business called Boyd Auto Body and Glass, and we're going to just clean it up. We're going to have the front end. We're going to divide the shop in two places, and the front end is going to be staffed with sharp-looking young people in some kind of clean shirt and clean trousers, and they're going to actually offer to drive you home. I mean, if you brought your dinged-up car, how are you going to get home? They'll offer to drive you home, and they'll offer then to go pick you up again. And hey, I wouldn't mind being picked up by some smart, sharply dressed young person. I wouldn't want to be picked up by any of those other guys, right? What he then did is he said, and then he cleaned up the back end of the shop as well. He said, we're going to make that the back end of the shop. You can eat off it. At the end of every day, you can eat off it. What he also did was he took some of the old, greasy mechanics and that type of thing, and he either retired them out or he cleaned them up. One way or another, it's clean up or get out, one of the two. And again, he has the power to design the business that he's creating, right? He also then said, people go, well, how am I going to afford to pay it? He said, I'll bill your insurers for you. What happens if something comes wrong? We'll bring it back. And in fact, I'm going to give you a guarantee in writing for the life that you own your car. What else did he do? And then if you wanted, he would give you a rental car. If it was going to be longer than a day, he would give you a free rental courtesy car that you could have for as long as right. So he just went tick, 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 tick. Now, did he still beat panels? Absolutely. Did he still put glass in the windows? Absolutely. He actually didn't change what the firm did. He changed how the firm did it. And here's what happened with Boyd Auto Body. What they did is they started in 1990, and then 10 years later, they kept adding locations, and then 10 years later, they became the largest single chain in Canada. They then went public, did a public offering, and they used that money to start to expand into the United States. Fast forward 15 years to 2015, which is when this chart was taken, and they were the largest single chain of panel beaters or automotive glass repair centers in all of North America, which may mean the world, but for sure it was North America. And you can see that the value of the organization had grown to $1.01 billion. That's shareholder value that had been created out of really a concept. Go forward a year, and the value of this has gone up 42%, from 1.01 to $1.42 billion. This increased in value $1.5 million a day. Go forward another year, and we're now up to $2.18 billion. Competitors can't seem to figure out how to do all this stuff, how to basically dress people nicely, treat customers politely, do a good job, and guarantee the work. And this is another part of innovation. And this is just a small business owner, uneducated, who just had some insight into what his customers aspire to. What Terry realized was that this was not the customer problem. The customer problem wasn't the dinged car. The customer problem was the peace of mind that went into the customer's decision-making process and their whole experience of getting their car fixed. Love this story. It's got a mixed ending. Boyd Auto Body is still around, and it's under different names down in the United States. But if you're Canadian, there's probably a Boyd Auto Body close to you. You know where it is. But Terry, about 6 or 7 years ago, was involved in a very bad snowmobile accident and basically taken out of the business. And took him, I think, 6 months in hospital, and then another 6 months to, get back on his feet again. He's back doing another business, but he still owns a quarter of the shares in this business. So when we talk about wealth creation, Terry still has, half of $1 billion worth of value that he created by simply having some insight into that particular business. So this is, again, are we going to do this? We're going to build an Apple. Are we going to build a Kodak? Are we going to build a Boyd? We may or may not, But these are the insights we can take from these larger companies, these better known companies that we can look into, and we can apply them to what we're doing. Okay. What do you think of, have you heard about Boyd?
Yes. My family's from Winnipeg, so
I did not know that.
Yes, they are. Yes, we are. My uncle and my aunt are still out there, and my father goes back repeatedly. It's kind of where he's trying to get back to all the time. So it's almost like for my family here in Toronto, it's almost like our second home. So my dad behaves just kind of whenever he goes there, he goes for a good chunk of time and does the daily errands. And Boyd's definitely part of the rounds with taking the car in, and it has been for my whole life. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's an amazing story. It's a very inspirational story to come out of, especially come out of Manitoba. It's nice to hear stuff like that.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, it's absolutely. And it can happen anywhere. It's just a little bit of insight, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So here's 5 reasons why innovation drives shareholder value. So that's jumping number 2. So innovation creates differentiation. We've talked about this. It allows for increased margins, fresh marketing, and a reinvigorated brand. Innovation extends the life of existing products, just like Apple. Took computers which were under enormous price pressure and enormous competition from around the world. They've now they don't own they don't own a majority of computers that are sold, but I think it's this #1 computer brand that is sold, and their margins on those computers are ridiculously high. But for any existing product or service that you have, what you can do is you can make that product smarter, faster, lighter, stronger, more of something or less of this, right? You can extend the life of it by just giving some more thought to it. It opens new opportunities and new markets. If it is brighter, smaller, bigger, larger, right? It allows you to go into new and different places without much additional effort, right? And the cost to develop a new product or service is this. The cost to develop an extension to a product or service to make it meet the needs of a new marketplace is this, and it allows you to go into a marketplace that could be just the same and or bigger, right? It also is the best way to get a new customer's attention. Hey, whoa, you can do that and that. That's awesome. Edge out a competitor and keep existing customers because nobody else can match what you're doing. It leverages existing customer and supplier relationships, right? If you're known to be someone who is smart and continues to innovate, people will always prefer to deal with you because you become trusted. Business is tough to find dependable, reliable, trustworthy relationships. And when you do, you tend to hang on to those people. And in particular, if you're talking to your supply chain, your products become their revenue. Right, your products become your supplier's revenue, and so they're going to want to say, "Well, what new thing did you come up with today, Steph?" "Oh, I got this, awesome!" Because I know that that's going to just help me to go to my own customers and make more money, and et cetera, right?
Oh yeah, I've had that many conversation with many a supplier already on with my company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's awesome. Innovation's benefits are often felt beyond a single project. So when you have some excitement over here, then it creates excitement all over the place, and it reflects that. In particular, if you have a culture, you can broaden that culture so that, wow, we're working on something cool too. Let's celebrate this. And we know that in a month or 6 months or a month, a week or whatever, that it'll be our turn to celebrate that. So a culture of innovation is a rising tide, right, that touches everything. Also, it makes you an exciting place to go and work for. And I know that in Silicon Valley, people are leaving their jobs to always go to the next hottest thing. Now, that's got its own problems, and that, we don't want to have that. But just reflect that back into our own community, and what you see is that if you're doing cool things and continue to do cool things, people are going to want to come and work for you. The bonus reason: innovation doesn't only apply to products and services. And again, I want you to think about Boyd Auto Body. Ultimately, what they did is the same thing that everybody else did: fix the car, fix the glass, right? But what they did is they innovated in the pricing, the way that they priced their stuff, the way that they went and charged. They didn't bill the customer, they billed the insurance companies, which was new at the time. And some of the contracts, the way that they wrote, in particular, the clause that said you can take your car, as long as you own your car, you can take your car to any Boyd Auto Body collision repair center anywhere in the world. And if what we fixed broke, we will replace it absolutely free. It's in writing. You can like Walmart, you can innovate on your supply chains. There's other internal processes. I mean, take a look at what you're doing. If what you're doing is like if you're pen and paper, then get rid of the pen and paper. If you haven't looked at new technology lately, let's look at new technology, right? That helps to make you faster and less expensive internally, and might also add a couple of things. Corporate structures I don't want to get into, and financing. I had someone sent me an email a couple of days ago saying, we sell a high-end set of products. And what we're finding is that some segment of customers comes into our shop, kicks our tires on the high-end products, loves them, but leaves and goes and buys the lower-end stuff. How do we deal with that? And so they said, I want to go get maybe a low-end product, an entry-level product. You got to be careful with that, right? We're going to talk about this in pricing, but you got to be careful with that because it can cannibalize sales of this. But if you do that, along with maybe some pricing innovation, right? Rather than, let's say, a $99 product and a $299 product, why don't we make a $99 product, or you can get the $299 product for $19 a month, right? Over the course of over the course of a year or 2 years or whatever, and then throw in something else to make that. Now what you've done, you're innovating on the product, you're innovating on the offer, you're innovating on the way that they're on the pricing, the way that you might have to finance it, on some of the contract things. But what you're doing is you're creating someone who goes, oh yeah, I'm going to use that for $19 today. Great, $19 is cheaper than $99, and now you've got them, and you've got them coming back, and you've got a guarantee in place so that they're getting value from their higher priced premium quality. So innovation is absolutely everywhere. How did you factor in innovation into ice cream? Like, where is innovation in ice cream?
Well, given the nature of my company, I think I had mentioned to everybody before we began when we started all this, is that I come from the creative background. So I don't come from the business background necessarily. So the entrepreneur stuff is what I'm learning. But with the creative side, especially because what I do is plant-based, I have to be innovative from the get-go. I went around the country. It sounds like hard work, not really, but I researched ice cream companies. I researched people and how they were doing what they were doing. I researched their recipes. My whole company started because when I went vegan 10 years ago, I went to the stores and I tried the products that were available because I said, listen, if I'm going to do this, there better be something that tastes good, and nothing tastes good. So I gathered a whole bunch of products around me. Yeah. I read all the labels. Yeah. I took the familiar things out, and I researched as to why they were in those products. What was the reason that they were in there? Wow. Do they have to be in there at all? So
you're innovating on products, and you're innovating on supply chains. You're innovating on how to mix those recipes, and wow, yeah, and then I mean. And beyond that, it came to a point where it was, once I had established my recipe is unlike anybody that's still existing today in Canada, at least. Right. And the cool thing is that, you had mentioned even just internal innovation. How do we continuously innovate? Well, our base recipe, we can take it and make new flavors, but it's not just as simple as taking the base flavor and making a new flavor. We have to tweak all the chemistry. We have to figure out the marketing aspect of it, because we're doing something that's familiar, but it's in a completely different way, trying to market it in the most familiar way. So So you're raising, I mean, that's an awesome story, Steph, and you're raising the last point that I want to make, and which is perfect. And that is that, there are 28.8 million businesses in North America, and we can't all create one single thing that's completely unique and then defend the heck out of it, right? I mean, 28 million of us would go out of business if that's what we had to do. But the beautiful part about innovation is that as you innovate on multiple things, those multiple things, which in and of themselves may not be staggeringly huge, but they help to move us a little bit, and they help to move us a little bit. But then the combination of those things actually becomes like an inextricable thicket, a web of things that is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to replicate. It's why Terry Smith, I mean, who's doing panel beating, which has been done, since the first Model T rolled off the assembly line, right? It's been done for 150 years. He's able to still command a business that grew in value 40% year over year in shareholder value. Like a 40% year over year, are you kidding me? And it's the same thing with you, right? It's recipes, supply chains, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing. It's the relationships you've got with suppliers, with customers, with the whole thing. Those things, right?
And I think it touches back on the last lesson that we had from last episode, where my whole thing underneath, the second that I tasted that ice cream from the store down the street from me, that is supposed to be the big place of the holy mecca of all the great vegan things and whatever else, plant-based, dairy-free, whatever you want to call it, lactose-free stuff. But the second that I tasted it, I thought I can do better. And it goes back also against everything that you and I talked about, and we all talked about last episode, which was your mission, your value, your why. I kept my whole why of why I continue to innovate is because if there's a product out there that I taste that is comparable to mine or better, I may stop, but I doubt it, but I may stop. But until that point, I continuously go, I can do this better. Let me figure this out. Let me go in there. And, it's worked so far, and people love it. Suppliers love it and customers love it. And it works. And I think that's the main thing with everybody else. That's the key to innovation. If you feel that you have that spark that comes from whatever you're deciding to do, that I can do this better in this way, that's the start of that process,
Awesome. It's awesome. Fabulous. So innovation is absolutely everywhere. And here's the things that you can do. Do this at home. Do this at home, kids. Some people, sometimes you go, don't do this at home. No, you can do this at home, and so you should. And the first thing is, and it's absolutely critical, you need to talk to your customers. And not just talk to your customers about, as we talk about, we've got to bang this in, right? Not just about what they say that they want. Stephen Jobs is famously quoted, famously said, not quite my customers are idiots, they don't know what they want, but that certainly was the message, was that don't ask customers what they want because they don't yet know. And they can't imagine it. And quite frankly, it isn't their job. Their job is to run their own business in their own way and to be looking at their customers, right? But what Jobs and what Apple did is they tried to connect the dots into the future, try to predict what might be possible. And then they would do things like mock-ups, and then they would get in front of their customers and say, what do you think about this? What if we could do this, right? That was one way of doing it. Or, hey, what is really, what's really the pain point? Or what do you really listen? Talk to your customers, but better listen to your customers and listen to them absolutely intently. Listen to their aspirations, where they're going, what their pain points are.
I have a very quick story about that just for everybody. When I started my business, I went in with 4 flavors that I started. And what I do is much larger than ice cream, but I started with ice cream. So we're always talking about ice cream with me, really. But what I started with was 4 flavors. And I went in like gangbusters. I introduced it. I bought labels. I went crazy. I put them everywhere. And they weren't selling. And I couldn't figure out why. I was standing there with my superhero cape and my ice cream pints. And I was like, this is amazing. This is what you guys have all been asking for. This is what I've been asking for. And nothing was selling. So finally I got to the point where I checked my ego, and I went and I created an online survey, and I put it everywhere on our social media. And I said, here's the flavors here. Tell me about your preferences. Tell me if you even like ice cream. Walk me through it. And I got so much response. And I found out that the flavors that I had put out there, even though they were cool and they were innovative, they didn't like them. They wanted what they were familiar with, and they wanted a little bit of an innovation instead of like the full Tesla or the full Apple of what I could create.
Yeah. Give me vanilla, give me chocolate, give me, it's
they love
vanilla and make it good for me.
Yeah. Right? They love the chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. They like it when we do a little bit of Ben and Jerry's with some stuff in it but they want some familiarity. And that's, I think, across the board. We all want a little bit of a touchstone of the familiar, but how can you innovate on that familiar for me that makes it even cooler? And so the second that I changed my roster up and I listened to my public, I couldn't keep pints on the shelves. And that's still the story.
Yeah.
So
it's always the story.
Yep. And I constantly do the surveys, and I constantly ask my community, and I tell them we're co-creating a company. That's how this works. So
awesome. Promote creative thinking, number 2. And I need to promote creative thinking not only in ourselves, because I mean, the definition of a business owner is that we have this creativity in our head. However, what we want to do is we want to promote creative thinking and celebrate creative thinking inside our own organizations. You know, just because you're the boss doesn't mean that you know what all there is to know. And in fact, I would say that you probably know the least. And in particular, if your organization has got to the size where you're not dealing with customers all the time, right? So make sure that you are promoting and celebrating creative thinking inside your organization. Make fast decisions. Some of us don't make decisions at all. You know, we're in a profession, for example. Some professions can be hidebound, and they teach us to do this, and you know, it's where the grandparents have done it, and the parents have done it, and we got to do it, and your kids are going to do it, and everything else. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. It can't happen. We need to be able to get out there, and if we see something, we need to change it, and change it even if it breaks, even if it doesn't work, because then you can unchange it. You've learned something, you've zigged, and now you get a zag. But sometimes 1 out of 10 times, 2 out of 10, 1 out of 3, every time you make a decision to zig, the zig was good. And so make fast decisions, get that into the habit, and then measure stuff, whether it be measuring stuff on your financial statements, which you should be looking at every single month. And we'll talk more about that in the coming days, but also measure the results of tests. You know, did it taste better? I'm measuring, as you know, if you've taken any of the surveys, I measure how much you like the episodes every single episode. And I know that you liked episode 2 a whole lot more than you liked episode 1. And I understand why, because you told me. And the same thing was episode 3 and 4 and 5, right? And the episodes are as good as they are because previous people have told me through the lessons, you know, what they liked and what they didn't like, right? So measure stuff constantly in a variety of different ways. And we're going to talk a lot about that again in the coming sessions. And then prototype, mock up things. You don't necessarily have to create the ultimate end all be all, right? Create pictures of things. It's really easy to draw something out and get it in front of a customer, get it in front of a supplier. Can you make this? Can you do this? Would this make sense? What if we did this? Play what if games. And what if we were to do that? How would it solve this? You know, how would it change this? Oh, would it, right? Ask, those are the types of questions that you should be getting into every single time you're sitting down in front of a customer. It isn't just thanks for the sale, see you next time. It's thanks for the sale. How did you like it? What did you not like it? How could we do better? You know, what else is going on in your life that we need to know about? These are things you can be doing and should be doing all the time. Okay, we're getting close to the end. I don't even have a clock. I have no idea what time it is. What time is it, Steph? Do you know?
It is 2 minutes to 9 on my clock.
Oh my goodness, look at that. So we're just about getting to
2 minutes to the hour, sorry.
Just the hour, yeah, great. So here's how you should be applying it. This is your takeaway from this. I hesitate to put the word homework at the top, so I'll use the word apply it. So think about your customers' aspirations, which you should already have started to do, and then ask yourself the questions: how can your products, services, processes, everything be adjusted to support them better? And what I'm going to do, I don't know that I'll get it done tonight, but I will finish off a survey that I'll send out to you, which will prompt you. But I want you to start to think, write these things down, start to think about them. I'll give you a bit more information in the survey as I did last time. And I want you to prompt it, just write some of this stuff down and let's talk about it, right? It's the power comes from writing this stuff down and sharing it. Much more powerful than just, okay, thinking about it and that was a good idea or not, right? So let's apply it. Resources, as always, go to BusinessPRO.TV, scroll down to the Get Caught Up section, and you'll see every episode is there. And if you want to get the resources from that particular episode, whether it be a recording or the survey or any of the other stuff that we're talking about, just put your email in there and then you'll get an email instantly. That's how you get caught up with all of what we're doing here. Next time, we're going to talk about this. Lifting our sights is a good thing, and we've started to do that, but we haven't quite finished with it yet. But we're going to get a little more specific now in the next episode on Thursday about our businesses. Are we making money? Are we solving problems for our customers? Which customers are we solving problems for? Which problems are we solving? Which problems for which customers, right? We're going to start to get down into the nitty-gritty of this. So at the end of that episode, at the end of next episode, you'll be zeroing into specific areas of your business that you really like, or you may be identifying areas that need some work. We're going to start off with a business model, and we're going to spend 15 minutes with that. And that's how Steph and I met, is by diagramming a business model. And then we're going to talk about a business canvas, except we're going to do the BusinessPRO TV canvas. So we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to simplify things because I think the business canvas is, if you know what that is, it's way too complicated. As always, we have two people working their fannies off to bring this show to you. And Steph, I want to thank you again for being here. We're going to talk more tomorrow about this and all the rest of the shows. But I really appreciate you being on here and sharing your stories. It's awesome. And looking after the chat, I see you're troubleshooting as well.
Trying my best. No, it's really helping me to refine, and there's never an opportunity to not go over this stuff, no matter at what stage I think that you're at in business, whether you're an entrepreneur, or you're totally established, and maybe after public, you don't need to go over it, but you know, there's constant room for innovation. So thank you for providing this ground for me to be able to do it too. So
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And then the last piece is, well, two more pieces. BusinessPRO TV, there's the dates, there's the times. You guys you're all here, so you know how to get there. So this is more me speaking to the people who are watching it in YouTube and are watching it recorded. Hey, gang, you don't have to watch it recorded if you don't want to. You can come in and you can watch it live, and you can participate just as Steph is participating, and I'm going to bring a couple other people on in just a second. You can chat, you can ask questions, seek clarification, you can bring your own issues to the table. Business issues, please. And right. And so at the f2f.live, AlexG. And if you are watching this on YouTube Live, hey, subscribe and like, because that's how the world goes round these days. All right. Okay, now we're into after hours, and after hours is where we just basically throw the doors open. And Ricky, so this is a great demonstration of face-to-face. Because right now I'm in Victoria, Canada. Steph, you're in Toronto, Canada, so you're 5,500 kilometers, 4,000 miles away. And on the other end of the planet, this guy is so far away from us that he's in a different season. Never mind hour or a day, he's in a different season. Ricky Collins, love this guy.
Hey, Alex.
And I just want to say hi to him.
Hi, Steph. Hi, Steph.
Hello.
Hi.
You're what? Are you 11 or 16 hours, or how far ahead are you of us?
I'm so far ahead, I even got myself confused today.
You're so innovative in your time down there. Holy cow.
Yeah, we're 20 hours ahead, so
20.
It's 2 o'clock tomorrow for you.
Yep.
Yeah, but we shifted over to...
How's the future doing? Is it amazing?
Sorry, how's the
future doing?
Oh, brilliant. I wish I could be like this in the stock exchange. It would be great. But the reality is I confused myself because we had daylight savings in the weekend. And so we moved from being 19 hours ahead of you to 20. And I was starting to panic, wondering where Alex was an hour earlier. But no, it's all good. It's 1 o'clock. It kicks off for 1 o'clock in the afternoon for us.
Not only am I way behind you, Ricky, but I'm slipping even further behind. So hey, that's the way it goes. Yeah, you know, in every country it seems has its own daylight savings time, and so as I try to, as I do webinars around the world, it's really brutal. Because everyone's different time, and then anyway, it doesn't matter. Hey, listen, tell us about you were on a holiday. You were exploring one of my favorite countries in the whole world, right? Weren't you?
Yeah. My wife and I went up around the North Island. It's amazing how many countries you do go to, and I've traveled a lot, but you suddenly forget that you haven't really had a decent look at your hometown. So I hadn't been up and around the North Island for a while, so got a rental and just spent 2 weeks just popping around from site to site, saying hello to a few people and relatives.
Awesome.
That was great. And
for everyone who doesn't know where Ricky is, because I don't think we've mentioned it yet, he is our favorite Kiwi, if we can call it that. He's a New Zealander. And you're doing some wine-related thing, aren't you?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. No, I've been. You obviously know Henk, and
yep.
Henk and his son JD and I have been working away, building a wee app to help people build confidence in coming up with their own assessment and judgments of wine rather than relying on wine writers, which I'm as well.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So it's been a work in progress now for some considerable time. We were all set to launch about a year ago, but the world changed and we needed to move to having the data being basically in the cloud. So we want people to be able to connect their iPads to their iPhones and be able to also connect with other users, other people, friends. So it's more than just tasting wine yourself. It's about a community of people that have a common interest and how you can share your thoughts on wines that you're tasting and maybe get their views. And it's a very simple process of working through the criteria that you would think about when you're assessing a wine, and basically logging it into your own little database that you can share. So, yeah.
Awesome. Do you have a release date? And I hate to ask it because it's software, and I know from face to face, like it's just, never talk about a release date. But do you have a release date?
No, we don't. We are working. We've got a very pretty much concrete now level of minimum viable product. So, picking up on your point that you've got to move these things fast. It's a bit of an oxymoron for us on this one, but ultimately we hope to have it out basically to our testers by the end of this year. So we're working on a concept of how you actually attract people and get them enticed into getting and working with this thing. So we're working on gamification so that people can actually pretty much see how they're progressing and building their own confidence with the wines that they would try.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And how are you gonna make money?
Okay. And I think you and I have had a chat about this briefly. I had a good session with a business mentor here in Dunedin. She's well known in locally, and she pretty much said the same thing that you've just said to me. Show me where the money is going to come from. So rather than coming up with this fancy new tool, you actually have to focus on, what is the problem? Why would people want this device? And it's actually not necessarily the device, just as you said. It's actually overcoming basically the problem they have or the fears. And wine is one of those terrible things. There is an element of snobbery around wine. And ultimately, Hank and mine and JD's aim is to bring it down to the level of what people would think of with beer. No one has a problem picking up and talking about beer, but they do with wine. So the aim is to actually find how we attract people that want to get on board with that. And one of the things is wine education. We're thinking about not trying to get too elaborate with it, but go to the basic things about wine. When you were starting first drinking, what were the things you wanted to know, and how did you actually get them, and how did you apply them to either not just your own enjoyment, but maybe your work? New Zealand's going through a big phase of a burst of tourism, like a lot of countries will be. People come into our country and they want to enjoy our wines. We're now, New Zealand, believe it or not, is the USA are large importers of wine, and the country that they import the most from is probably France, followed by Italy, followed by New Zealand.
Wow.
Where? So
and you're this tiny little, like 3 million or 4 million people supplying this 330 million person giant, aren't you?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It's not by volume, it's by value. So it's that elite, higher end stuff. So when people want to come to New Zealand and try wine, the level of expectation is that they should get good stuff. And the big thing I'm looking at is saying, well, it's one thing to have the product, but you also need the service. And what the gap could be is that people need to know a little bit more about wine when they're actually serving people wine, or when they're telling tourists where they should go to try and find the best wines. And that's the link, is to basically connect it to a situation or a context. And by the way, here's this great tool that you can actually carry on and learn and build your confidence to carry on basically building that confidence around wine and wine tasting, how you can actually recommend it to people.
It's awesome.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Since you started to talk about the wine thing, which is, I think was in the last at least 6 months, maybe longer. I mean, I don't drink a lot of wine, but all my wine now has been Pinot Noirs coming from New Zealand, and I've been actually surprised at just how good they are. I spent some time in California, so I was drinking California Pinots. So yeah, awesome. Well done.
Thanks. Yeah, the Pinots are good, and we have international conferences, and it's probably fair to say that the USA, down in Oregon, the French, and us seem to be basically leading the way in that field.
Duking it out.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think I'm not sure what happened with Steph, but I know that there's. Can I bring in Daniel and by the way, did you have any questions, Ricky, of anything at all while you're here?
No. Well, the session today was a good rerun for me. I sat in with you when basically you did the MBA class in California, and
right.
Those subjects were similar to what we had that day, and it's great to see it re-explain. It's just reconfirmed for me that innovation is a continuous cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, and thanks for popping in. Like I love you because you always come in and you're always like, New Zealand must have the biggest, fattest internet pipe of all, because you're just like your next door. I love this. So well done.
Thank you for that. Yeah. No, I really enjoy it. It's always good. I love the fact that we can talk as though we're in the same room.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Daniel K., where are you, and what's going on, man?
Hi, Alex. Nice to meet you in person, virtually at least. I'm from Argentina. I'm from Buenos Aires. I'm the one from the southern corner as well. So this is an invasion from the southern hemisphere.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Argentina. Well done.
Indeed. So we were talking about New Zealand wine, and I can tell you about the Malbec, which is one of the best red wines in the world, coming out from Mendoza province in Argentina as well.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, you'll have to send me a link to a wine, good Malbec that I can get up here, and I will certainly try it.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I'm not a red wine drinker, so I can't tell you too much about it, but I can speak about my business, and I can bore you to death with my knowledge.
Well, good. Listen, why don't you give us a 30-second introduction to your business, Daniel?
Absolutely. I'm in the, I would say, roller blinds manufacturing. Okay, so shadings, blackouts, these sort of things, awnings, exterior shades. And I believe we have a very nice combination of in-depth knowledge of the engineering behind it, the textiles that go with it, and the metallurgical part that obviously gives us the structure that keeps everything in place. Okay, and this is a unique combination. I would call it my unique selling proposition. Mechanical engineer, I can offer that to the market, and there is hardly anyone else in Argentina, at least, that can offer that sort of knowledge combination. And I don't want to speak too much about myself, but you asked.
And so what's your number one business challenge right now as we speak? Are you okay to tell us?
It's cash flow. At the moment, it's cash flow, Alex, because if I look at the financials of my business, the financials are okay, but the problem is that we depend too much from the cycle of the different works in which we take part, okay, projects as such. So, for instance, it is very customary for us in Argentina, and I would say in the whole of Latin America, then when you sign up to a project with me, you will give me something like 50% of an advance payment, and then at the end I get the rest. But the problem is that the reliance of the contractor and workers in the construction industry is not so high, so the reliability is not that good. So your provision, your cash flow provision, it's very bad. So I say, okay, I get the 50%, I manufacture everything, I am planning to install it, so to get the rest of the money to our business. But the issue is that if I'm planning for 20, 25 days, maybe the works are being delayed for another month or so. So I run in the dry.
Yeah.
I'm left stranded.
Well, yeah, and I feel that we're going to talk about cash flow a lot.
I'm sure.
And you and I have already started to talk by email back and forth a little bit.
Indeed.
So yeah, no, I feel you. I think a lot of small businesses struggle with cash flow for all kinds of reasons, and your reliance on undependable outside people, that is maybe impacting the quality of the stuff that gets out there, but fundamentally, it's affecting your survival. I mean, it's, oh my goodness. So yeah, well, you know what? Keep staying tuned, and let's keep talking, and let's see if we can find a solution for you. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm enjoying every chapter of these sessions. So please keep on going, Alex and Steph. You're doing a great job. You keep us all very enthusiastic about this.
Well, thanks. You know what? And set up some wine, or tell me where I can bet the wine, because I'm drinking weak tea right now, and it's. I think these sessions could be even more interesting if I was drinking a glass of wine.
See you.
All right. Well, listen. If there's any other questions or anyone else that wants to come in, now's the time. Or we'll watch the chat. I'll pull Ricky and Daniel out. So thank you guys for Ricky. It's great to see you. I'm glad you had a good holiday.
Thanks for that. Cheers.
See you again. And Daniel, great to see you face to face. All right. I think that looks like a wrap. So thank you all for attending September 26th. It's Tuesday. We'll see you again on Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about zeroing in to your business a little more. Thanks again, Alex Glassey and Steph Krasinski.